And thank you for joining us for this College of Social Sciences and Humanities, Meet Your Major, American Sign Language, Cultural Anthropology, Human Services, and Sociology Meet Your Major session. My name is Michaela Modica, and I am the Senior Coordinator of Undergrad Recruitment Programs and External Engagement for the College of Social Sciences and Humanities, or CSSH, as you may hear us call it for short today. I am joined by my colleagues that you will see on the screen in just a moment here, who are from the American Sign Language, Human Services, Sociology, and Cultural Anthropology programs, as well as one of our CSSH co-op coordinators who works with students from these majors. In just a moment, I will turn it over to the panelists to introduce themselves before we open the floor for Q&A. You can use the Q&A box to submit your questions at any point throughout the session, and when we get to the live Q&A portion, we will answer as many of your questions as we can throughout the session. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Professor Lori Wynot.
Thanks, Michaela. Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Wynot, and I'm the director of the American Sign Language and Interpreting Education Program. I'm also a teaching professor of interpreting here at Northeastern. I guess we've been asked to tell you a little bit about ourselves and maybe a little bit about the program. I've been at Northeastern for a little over a year, so I've joined the faculty last year in January. It's been a very interesting, fun year. But I have been a professional interpreter for 31 years, and my working languages are American Sign Language, Australian Sign Language, and French and English. And I've been teaching interpreting teaching and or mentoring interpreters since 1998. Let's see, my research areas, I consider myself a sociolinguist. And I generally research in topics of sign language interpreting, sign language contact, so multilingualism and sign language contact, healthcare interpreting, which is something that I do, and consequence-based ethics. So interpreting and translation is my area of research, and looking at sign languages and cross-linguistic contact. What happens when interpreters interpret for people who are using a sign language maybe from another country? What does that look like for us? Etc. So some of the classes that I teach, I generally been teaching ASL linguistics, and I've taught, not here at Northeastern, but at other places, I teach some of our skills classes. So teaching people how to do the work of interpreting, so that language transfer, cognitive process sort of stuff, as well as a little bit of research. I teach some of the research classes and support senior research projects, and ethics. So our ethics class, I support our students when they go out on field work, and we have discussions about ethical decision making. Yeah, so that's pretty much a little bit about me and the program. The program itself is, we actually have the major in interpreting, ASL English interpreting, and we have 4 combined majors with other disciplines such as human services, psychology, linguistics, and theater. So that's pretty much what we have. Our interpreting program is an intensive program of study, and we've been actually, Northeastern's proud to say that we've been teaching interpreting, we've been teaching American Sign Language. We're one of the first universities in the country to teach American Sign Language for college credit before it was actually given, recognized for college credit. And we've been teaching interpreters for almost 40 years. So we've been around, the program's been around for a long time, so we're proud to say that. We have a rich heritage. And yeah, so that's pretty much, I think, it about the general information about me and a little bit about the program. There's more information elsewhere, which Michaela will tell you about. But I want to hand it over to one of our students in the program, one of our seniors, Kelly Small, who's one of our seniors in the interpreting program. Kelly?
Hi, I'm Kelly, Foreign Sign Language Kelly. I'm an American Sign Language interpreting major. I have minors in psychology and theater. Those 2 are just passion projects, things I like. Over my time here, I've been able to do a lot within my program. I went on co-op and I worked in deaf mental health for about 8 months full-time, and then I stayed on for about 1.5 years part-time. And I'm currently on an interpreting practical rotation. It's an internship that's built into the major. So I've got a ton of work experience, and that's really great because I get to go out and interact with the local deaf community, which, you know, like any language, you need to be immersed in it to really know it. So I learn a lot in class, and I learn a lot outside of class too. And I'm finishing out my senior year research project. It's on healthcare access and health literacy in the American deaf community. And this summer, I'll be working at the Language and Mind Lab, studying how ASL is processed by the brain. So that'll be a nice chance to use my psychology minor and my ASL discipline at the same time. And yeah, I've really enjoyed my time here. I get to do a lot and I get to be in plays and I'm a tour guide and it's been fun.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Hi, I'm Lori Gardenier. I'm the director of the Human Services program here at Northeastern, and I teach our foundation course. So if you're a part of the program or you just take our classes, you're likely to encounter me while you are part of the Human Services program, major or minor. I also run 2 global programs in the summer months, one to Japan and one in the UK. And I'm currently partnering with Oxford Press on a textbook for human services studies and to prepare practitioners. In addition to that, I'm working with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to conduct a nationwide study of state human services networks, thinking about the ways that they intersect with healthcare and other areas of the field that work towards, community betterment. So the one thing I would like to just impart upon you about the Human Services program is that it's an applied program that prepares students for practice in fields of social change. So that could mean working directly with individuals in a therapeutic or counseling capacity, or directing a program or nonprofit organization, or working on a larger kind of macro level on systems and social policy advocacy work. What you will find here at Northeastern is the emphasis on experiential education is really central. And in human services, we deeply embody that spirit. And our students are engaged from the outset in service learning and community facing work. And our student who's here with us today, Olivia Alcott, will talk about her experiences in the program, and we'll both be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the types of things that you would engage in here as part of the Human Services program. So I'll give it to Olivia.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Olivia. As you can see, I am a Human Services and International Affairs combined major. I am graduating in 2 weeks from tomorrow. I also have a minor in political science. I have really enjoyed my time as a human services major. As Lori mentioned, I've taken a few classes with her. I've also been able to serve as her teaching assistant, which was amazing. And I think one of the best things about the human services program is really the relationships that you can make both with students and also the faculty members, because we are one of our smaller programs. You really get one-to-one connections that I have found to be so important. Like Kelly, I'm also a tour guide, and a lot of what I talk about in my programs is getting to know my other students in my major, and also just getting to know my professors really well. As I am finishing up, I would say one of the most intimidating but also really rewarding classes that I have taken is my senior capstone. Actually, just on Tuesday, I was able to present my capstone focusing on areas of college and career readiness. And this is something that I've been able to do both in my classes and also in both of my co-op positions. And I think that the Human Services program really allowed me a lot of freedom in order to find different passions and different interests, and be able to connect everything back into my classes has been really important to me. And yeah, as Lisa said, I'm very happy to answer questions about anything related to the Human Services program. And I will pass it over to Liza. Liza is next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Liza Weinstein, and I'm an associate professor of sociology and the chair of the Department of Sociology and Cultural Anthropology. A little bit about my own research. I'm an urban sociologist. I work primarily in cities around the world to understand primarily how people make claims for housing and access to space and urban livelihoods. Most of my work is in India, although I've also done research in South Africa and in the United States. I lead international programs like Dr. Gardenier. I lead summer programs. I've done one in South Africa for a number of years, and I'm organizing one, hopefully, to bring students to India in the summer of 2022. our department, it offers two different majors, a major in cultural anthropology and a major in sociology, as well as numerous combined majors around the university, both within the College of Social Sciences and Humanities and outside as well. Some of our most popular combined majors are with health sciences, environmental studies, communications, international affairs, human services, and as you'll hear from one of our majors in just a moment, political science, as Isa is a combined major with sociology and political science. I teach courses in pretty much in the three main areas of my research, in urban studies and urban sociology, globalization and international affairs, and then also in South Asian studies. I'm finishing out a course this semester on culture and politics in modern India, as well as teaching the first year Welcome to College class that is sort of the orientation to life at Northeastern. And I've had the great support in that class from Isa, one of our majors, who is not just a major, but also a peer mentor for our first year students. So I will hand the virtual floor to Isa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Professor Weinstein, for that very nice introduction. My name is Isa Casillas. I am a second year political science and sociology major with a concentration in public policy, but I also have minors in journalism studies as well as environmental studies, and I will be graduating in fall of 2022. My first semester at Northeastern, I was an NUN student, and I got the opportunity to travel to the Czech Republic, where I learned so many different things, not just within the classroom, but also outside the classroom, that really compelled me to continue to examine kind of societal institutions, and what really pushed me to be a sociology major. So that's kind of how I got here. Outside of all of my majors, I am, like Professor Weinstein mentioned, I was a TA for Sociology 1000 this year, which was a really great opportunity to connect with students while they kind of go about their first year, as well as being an NUN mentor and a peer mentor for the College of Social Sciences and Humanities. I am a research assistant for Professor Ramiro Martinez, where I'm doing some quantitative data coding, as well as working on my own research project as I go into my second year that looks at how the Mexican American population in the US has been studied sociologically. In addition to that, I'm involved in the Latin American Student Organization, where I'm Vice President of External Affairs. I am the Korean American Student Association's Performance Coordinator, and I'm also a teacher for Northeastern's dance company, New Danco. So I've really been lucky to have all of these experiences while I have been away from the Boston campus, as I'm located in Los Angeles, but I think that's just very telling of the type of campus spirit and academic participation that you can get, and they're so readily available to you at Northeastern.
That's great. Thank you, Isa. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Wersch. I am a senior co-op coordinator for sociology, cultural anthropology, human services, and combined majors thereof, such as American Sign Language and human services. I've been here for over 18 years and love the fact that I'm connecting the students' educational academics with the real work. You should know that over 95%, I just looked this up today, over 95% of the students in these majors do at least one co-op. And that's really exciting. And many do too, etc. So students can go on co-op as early as spring of their sophomore year, which you've probably heard. There's a co-op prep class that we teach beforehand to help get rid of your nerves and get you all prepared. You work directly with your co-op coordinator, which would be me if you're in these majors. Except if American Sign Language, it would depend on that kind of thing. But I do work with quite a few. As Lori mentioned there, and Liza, there are plenty of combined majors. So you guys might choose some of these majors plus another one. And so you should know that your co-op jobs, if you choose to do co-op, because it's not required, but like I said, over 95% of the students do it, you're not limited to choosing jobs that are only considered for your major. These majors are very broad, and like Lori mentioned, in terms of all the different ways a human services student could find jobs after graduation. The same thing for our undergrads. We have students interested in business, education, research, and even like direct care. And so I could go into more detail about each of those, but we have students that do kind of everything and anything. I can't even really give you like a typical student, although I could give you examples. But so like for-profit businesses, nonprofit businesses, advocacy and social change, or maybe like a full for-profit marketing job, education, everything from kind of like very early childhood ed up to higher ed, and some types of co-ops in special ed too. And then research at the university, research at companies, using research skills in normal everyday jobs, as well as jobs that are focused that way. And then direct care is everything that's more client focused. So that could be education, or it could be just working with vulnerable populations, working with mental health or differently abled folks, kind of the whole gamut. And our students, like I said, compete for these jobs with other students looking on co-ops, but basically you could apply to a job that's listed under political science, or sometimes even engineering. If you have the qualifications, you can apply and compete. So welcome.
Great, thank you. So I will stop sharing these slides so we can see everyone on screen. And so we're going to start the Q&A portion of the session. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to drop them into the Q&A box. So the first question, so I think you addressed this mostly, Lisa, is how accessible co-ops and internships are in these programs. So I think you spoke about how students can pursue co-ops in lots of different industries. Can you talk a little bit about what that process looks like, and how are those internships and co-ops accessible to students in these majors?
Sure. So students are allowed to go on co-op as early as spring of their sophomore year. And like I said, they take this co-op prep class beforehand. Your resume gets approved, and then you're released to apply to jobs in this database. And as long as you meet the criteria of that job, you're able to apply to it. And so that's in terms of accessibility. Once you've met the criteria to be released to look at co-op jobs, which is like working with me and getting the class done and stuff like that, then you're able to apply and interview, and then you land a job, and then I help you usher yourself into that experience and on your way back too. So co-op is considered part of your academics, and it's the preparation beforehand, the activity when you're on your co-op, and then the reflection when you come back. In case I didn't answer the full question, I wasn't sure if accessible meant accessible in terms of available or accessible in terms of an ability. So depending on if you are differently abled, there are also those discussions can happen with me, and I can help open those discussions with employers. But according to the ADA, employers are not allowed to discriminate based on any ability. So they should all be accessible. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, great. That was perfect. Thank you. So if we can continue in the kind of topic of experiential education at Northeastern, Issa, you talked a bit about research that you are doing. If you could talk a little bit about how you got involved with that, and then if anyone from the other departments, faculty, or students want to weigh in about how students can get involved in research in your programs.
Yeah, so even though there's definitely a system in place at Northeastern where you can apply for grants to go get lunch with a professor that you're interested in a field of study, I actually just went about in the fall of 2020. I emailed one of the professors because I had been really interested in some of his work in the intersection between immigration in communities and criminal justice as that relates to sociology. And he just happened to be one of the professors who I was taking that semester. And so I reached out to him and I was like, hi, Professor Martinez, like, do you need any help? And it really was that simple. From there, I think I have built a really great mentoring relationship with him. I have a lot of the skills that I am using in the research that I do for him. I learned through the quantitative techniques class. So I think Northeastern does a really great job in terms of coursework for giving you these type of hard skills that you might need in the industry. But furthermore, it kind of just gives you, because of just those such well-versed professors who are like experts in their field, it gives you a lot of opportunity to explore interests that might not seem exactly related, but there's a lot of application and academic merit to studying these things.
Great, thank you, Isa. Can any of our faculty members weigh in on just how students can get involved in research in your programs, whether that's research-related classes that are built into the curriculum or getting involved in research outside of the classroom?
Michaela, I can say that I've had many students take a research project with a professor that's either student focused or professor focused, and also do it as a co-op and be able to totally immerse themselves in it. So it's everything from while you're in classes and helping out to kind of much more advanced. And I know Lori and Liza have both done research with students, so I'll let them talk.
Sure, I can, provide a little bit of perspective. So right now we have an undergraduate research team working on a series of projects. We do a lot of nonprofit evaluation out of human services. So we just completed a study of a youth development program that's embedded in Boston Public Schools. And so we've had a small research team of students who've been supporting that project, helping us, conduct focus groups and having the opportunity to do the kind of qualitative and quantitative analysis that accompanied that project. They come through different pathways, not entirely dissimilar to what was just described, of like a student reaching out and saying, hey, I understand you kind of do this stuff. I'm interested in this stuff. Can I work with you? But then also what I wanted to do was to mention our really robust, what they call the PEAK program. And it's an acronym that's escaping me right now, but maybe someone else here can help me out and break it down. But essentially, it's a really intentional model where it kind of scaffolds up in terms of exposure to research, to supporting research, and building up your skills and support so that you yourself can conduct research independently, but with some faculty guidance and support. So we have these really well thought out structures in place at the university that allow you to engage in research in ways that it's supported and not kind of an afterthought that you would, kind of passively participate in. Just like sociology, we offer a research course in methods that prepares students. And some students feel a little like intimidated by it initially, and then they realize, no, I have this, I can do this. This is actually incredibly useful and important for me as I go out on co-ops so that I'm a savvy consumer of high quality research, and that can inform how I practice and how I am in the field. And it inspires students to continue on into graduate school. We've had students go on and pursue PhDs and other, professional tracks where research is quite central. We have a student at Harvard right now working on a research project, and we have students who are focusing on PhDs specifically on research and evaluation.
And I can chime in briefly as well. I've worked with students on a number of research projects, which I think some students may find surprising sometimes because most of my work is ethnographic fieldwork based in India or in other parts of the world. So one might have a hard time imagining how do you get involved with research projects like that while in Boston. In some cases, I have actually traveled with students. I have a PhD student. We've traveled a couple of times to India together to work on a project. But in most cases, I've had students get involved with qualitative data coding. Most of the work that I do is not quantitative, but works with interviews and participant observations in communities. And while some of the students who work on projects with me are learn those skills in the context of a qualitative methods course or a broad research methods course. Much of it is learned on the job, and my students, either I provide training or my students provide training to one another on our research teams, and they learn how to work with, we work with a few different qualitative coding software packages, and students develop the skills to take a block of text and identify themes that are associated with that text and be able to look at relationships in the text and be able to discern patterns, and we work together to build theory from the analyses of the data. And in many cases, students have worked on projects that are sort of driven by the research questions that I've been asking, but often we find ways, or we usually try to find ways, to break off a piece of the project that the student can really invest in and develop questions that emerge out of their own academic and intellectual curiosity. So I've been working with a student on discourses that governments use to justify slum evictions in Indian cities, and then counter discourses that activists use to challenge those. And she's interested in media and journalism as well, and has been sort of developing her own set of questions using the same data set, but look at how media perspectives and how media coverage of issues of slum evictions in Indian cities have changed over time. And that's going to be her senior capstone project in anthropology in the fall. And I think that that's a pretty common pathway through the program, where developing the skills from working with the professor develop into a project that a student can really take ownership over.
I can also speak a little bit to research in our discipline. And because I'm new, we're actually just starting to build a little bit more into the program. We've had historically a research capstone. And what we've done in my time here is offer some more specific research methods training in the discipline in the fall semester before the capstone. And so I've just recently created and has been approved a new course that basically is research methods in interpreting and translation, because the profession of interpreting, spoken language interpreting, it's been around for a long time, but sign language interpreting is kind of an emergent literature. It's only really as old as probably me. So it's been studied recently, and there's increasing amount of research on the work of interpreters and all of the elements involved in the work of interpreters. And so what we're doing, and maybe Kelly can talk a little bit about this, is we're trying to provide opportunities for students to learn how to be sort of novice researchers. So we teach them some methods in qualitative and quantitative methods, looking at some of the research in the discipline, helping them to devise their own questions, things that interest them and things that they might want to research as a project for their capstone. And so myself and another instructor, Patrick Rosenberg, have been supporting students last year and then this year towards their own projects. And I am hoping to have students come to me or reach out to students who are interested in assisting me with some research projects that I'm sort of currently working on and trying to get up and running. So yeah, that's where we are in our research sort of focus in our department. But Kelly's project was something that I think maybe Kelly, you can talk a little bit about that. It's in an area that sort of intersected with some of my research on comprehension of interpreting, rendered interpretations, and the healthcare interpreting field. So Kelly, maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience with research in the department.
Yeah, I'm happy to. When I was a freshman, I remember being told that our senior year, we would do a full year of research that we call capstone. And I thought, oh no, I'm not a researcher. But when the time came, what I like personally about our department is, like Lori said, there's not a ton of literature on American Sign Language interpreting, or even American Sign Language, just the language. So the goals of our research are slightly different, and the spectrum of what we can study is a lot more broad. Like, for example, I'm studying healthcare access for deaf people just because I think it's interesting, and I happen to want to be a medical interpreter. But one of my colleagues is an ASL major and a theater major, and she's studying accessibility in theater context. Or one of my friends is a linguistics minor, and she's studying how do you define fluency, what makes a person fluent. So really the goal of our research is trying to like contribute to that larger body of research, or contribute to the program, just find out things that haven't been asked before. So that can be a big undertaking, but I thought that I felt like it was the opportunity to learn a lot about myself as a researcher, because I never thought of myself that way. And your project kind of becomes like your baby. When you work on it a whole year, you want it to be as good as it can be, and also you're invested in really answering the question because you genuinely want to know. So that's been really great. And then, like Lori said, or I'm sorry, Isa also said, you can go to a professor if you think their work is interesting. I did the same thing for my work this summer. I just thought, I want to see how American Sign Language works from a sort of more of a pathology perspective, a medical perspective. And so I'll be studying how fMRI imaging can show the perception of sign language in the brain. Like, how does your brain understand visual language versus a spoken one? And that's, again, intimidating but exciting. So I think even if you think, oh, this major isn't like really research based, when will I use this? You will. And the process itself, it teaches you a lot about your strengths and your weaknesses.
I
Great,
saw there was
thank
a
you.
question.
Oh.
Sorry, Michaela, but I just saw there was a question in the chat about research as co-op, and I have worked with students in the past on the research projects that they've done as a co-op, and often it is the faculty member who will request funding. I have a National Science Foundation grant, and I apply for other external grants, and I will write money into grants, as many faculty members do, to request the resources to hire a co-op student. And so we are able, through that mechanism, to pay students quite well at competitive rates, so that our research co-ops will, be attractive to them compared to other paid co-op experiences that they can have. There are other terms when haven't had the resources necessarily, and students have done a part-time paid co-op, a research co-op with me, and they've done another part-time, so they've done 20 hours with me, because those are the funds I've had available that term. But really, in conversation with faculty members is really where you figure out if they have the resources. Often co-op coordinators like Lisa know which faculty members might be hiring for co-op, and we communicate very actively. So, Lisa?
Oh, that's great. I mean, I think that the broader answer is also there's that type, but there's jobs in the business world that also are very research focused. And there's also student created projects that can get funded from different funds. Maybe not as well, maybe not as competitive, not like $15 an hour, but you get a research scholarship over here and another one over here. So that's what I call an experiential co-op. And that's when I work with a student where they kind of create their own self-designed co-op. And it depends on, what they can live on in terms of money and that kind of thing. But most co-ops are full-time and paid. And so the goal is that you have that or a combination of that with different things. Like Liza said, sometimes there's 2 part-time things that balance it out. So they're very exciting. And the student that Liza was talking about, Erin, is on a full-time co-op right now and still helping her. And doing her capstone class. So way to go.
Great, thank you, everyone. That was really great. We get a lot of questions from students who, sometimes I think it can be obvious in other colleges what research might look like. And so it's always really great to hear what research looks like in CSSH. I have a question that I'm going to pose to the students first, but then anyone else can feel free to weigh in after. So we can start with Olivia, and then we'll hear from our other 2 student panelists. How would you describe the CSSH community? And then I'll even go a step further and see if you can, or ask if you can talk about kind of the community within your particular department or program.
Absolutely. This is a question that I've answered quite a few times of giving tours. That's always something that people want to know, like, what is it actually like within the community? And I think that the CSSH community for me has been so wonderful in these past few years, and the relationships that I've been able to cultivate, both with students and also with faculty members, that I truly don't know what I would have done without. People on this call who I have called at my worst, being like, I need help, and knowing that call will always be answered is something that I have found to be so beneficial in my time. And also, it has just been filled with all of these people who truly are just astounding. I mean, I'm listening to all of these research things that are happening. I'm like, this is just so cool. And these are the people that I get to call like my peers. It's always something that has really never failed to humble and astound me. And then for human services in particular, they're just amazing. I love everyone in the human services department. I think something that summed it up very well was that after our capstone presentation on Tuesday, we all met up on campus, all of the students with our faculty advisor, to sit very socially distanced and just talk about the semester and the fact that that's what we all wanted to do with our Tuesday afternoon on that day, that it was like sunny and 72 and gorgeous. And instead of going and sitting in the park, we were all just like, let's talk about human services. I think just really makes sense for what this department is, of always wanting to discuss and be around each other and have some fun, and also be talking about all of these incredibly important and incredibly varied topics. Like every single person who I have met in human services has a different view of what human services means to them, which has been my favorite thing about this major, is that it is so specific, it is so personal, and that's something that I've just adored and appreciated of my time here.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was me or Issa, but I agree with Olivia that the community in CSSH is, well, a lot of our majors within this college specifically are smaller, so I think the students feel more bonded to each other and they know people. Like sometimes the engineering graduate class will be 400 students. My graduating class, there's 8 of us. So you get very close with people. I also think CSSH brings, like, they make a really strong effort to bring their students into the college. Like your feedback matters. Issa's a peer mentor, I'm a peer mentor. I get a lot of emails from the college itself. So it's been an experience where I always feel like I can reach out to, for instance, Michaela's been my academic advisor for all 4 years. And if I needed her, she was always there. Within the American Sign Language department, I have had some incredible teachers, some of whom have become friends. I have 4 other wonderful interpreting majors that I'll be graduating with. And I think that the smaller the major, the more passionate the majors are. And so everybody really wants to succeed, but they also want to see each other succeed. So that's been nice. I didn't want to go to a college where I felt like I was competing with my peers. Here I'm competing with myself, and my peers are a team. You don't succeed alone, you succeed as a unit. So that was an unexpected, like, pleasant surprise to actually be part of a team for my whole time here. And yeah, I think it's a great department to join, and I wish we had more people joining.
Definitely, to build off what Kelly and Olivia had said, CSSH just generally is among the most supportive, just like, units. I think that's a really great word to describe it, among the like most supportive units in Northeastern. And I think that's because that we do have like a number of smaller departments, but in that regard, you can really delve deep into these niche and really critical thinking driven conversations. And like, obviously, yes, that's great from an academic perspective, but like just being able to casually talk about the things that you're learning on a daily basis, I think has been really great. One of my best friends, and who's going to be my roommate in the fall, like, she is a sociology major, and she's the one that really helped me get in to my major. And so I think that's very telling of the sociology department as a whole. One of my mentees that I had when she was doing New Start, she was kind of concerned. She was like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to do this major, but I convinced her to do sociology because I was like, I think you should. And you shouldn't have to convince people to study things, but I'm very pro sociology. And I think everyone can kind of say that within CSSH, like each of the individual major programs are just so phenomenal and unique. And any goal that you want to achieve, a CSSH really just helps you succeed in that, from the faculty level to the advisor level, just to your peers. They want to help you like grow and thrive.
Great, thank you all so much. It's really great to hear about all of your awesome experiences in CSSH. So we have a couple of, we'll see how much time we have, but a couple of discipline specific questions. So for Lori Gardner, can you talk about how much of human services is counseling based versus social policy in your curriculum, and how do students kind of lean into one side more than the other?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And I'll be brief and then open the door to further in-depth conversations, kind of after our time here. You catch me by email and we'll come up with a time to discuss. That's always something I'm happy to do. We look to develop kind of core competencies in all of these domains. So we want you to be, comfortable working in a counseling capacity, in very core skills that you might be interested in developing, understanding the relationship to social policy, and then nonprofit organizations. So everyone's going to take a course in all of those spaces. But if you're really interested in going deeper into one of those domains, the curriculum is flexible enough to allow you to do that. And one of the things that I think is so cool about Northeastern in general is that there's no one path. We're going to provide you with some curricular bounds and some guidance on where you might pursue your time here in the classroom setting, but through your service learning, through your co-op experiences, any international experiences you may choose to take, you're kind of going to have this quasi individualized experience, but with this unifying thread that is, kind of the foundation of your academic experience. And my role as your academic kind of support is to say, what are you interested in? What kind of courses can we encourage you to consider? And then working with Lisa, she's going to go a step further and say, how does that translate into your co-op experience? So you have this kind of team around you to shape your path. And so I'd be happy to speak with that person, in a separate conversation or over email and answer the question and talk specifically about courses. But that's a broader thematic experience that I think is probably, useful for everyone to think about.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and that really, I think, highlights that many of our human services, but also many of our programs in CSSH do offer that flexibility so students can really lean into what their particular interests are within the discipline. So I think our final question is another discipline specific one for Liza. If you could briefly speak about your urban studies of India.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll answer very briefly because the student the person who asked the question is welcome to reach out to me. My email address is on the department website. But very, very broadly, I'm interested in how do people make claims for housing and shelter, and particularly Indian cities have a very high proportion of their population that doesn't have formal legally recognized tenure. So they may live in squatter communities or informal settlements. And I'm most interested in questions of how do people who lack that formal, legally recognized sort of recognition, how do they make claims for housing and shelter using the electoral system and political avenues, social movements, the legal system. And so those are kind of the topics that I work on, but there are broader supports for these types of questions within CSSH. And so I'm affiliated also with Asian Studies, and we have a number of people who work elsewhere in South Asia, in India and other parts of Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. And we also, we have a surprisingly large concentration for a college of our size of faculty members who look at cities around the world. So we have faculty members who work in Middle Eastern cities, Latin American cities, East and Southeast Asian cities, and we have real strengths in understanding our increasingly urbanizing planet and how that impacts a variety of issues that people experience in their daily lives.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you to all of our panelists for joining us this evening, and for all of our attendees for being here. We have one more session next week. It's our final Q&A session for parents, families, and students. So any last minute questions you have, we would love to see you at that session next Tuesday. That should say Tuesday, April 27th, from 6:15 to 7. If If you have any other questions after this session, you can feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on the screen here. And so you can get in touch with me. And if I can't answer your question, I will direct it to anyone who can. If you want to follow up with Liza or Lori or any of our student panelists, I can put you in touch with them. And we also encourage you to follow our social media accounts, Students of CSSH. Isa did a great takeover on that platform earlier this week. So you can go take a look at that in our highlights. And you can also follow the college on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at NUCSSH. So thank you again so much for joining us this evening. And we hope to see you at Northeastern next year.
Bye, everyone.